Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. I am so excited for this one, you guys.
Me too.
It's going to be good.
Yeah.
As you know, this show Research Review Radio. So today we are diving into the world of fad paintings from Rajasthan, India. Have you heard of these?
I have. They are fascinating.
They sound pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about what they are.
Well, they're not your average paintings. These are vibrant, colorful scrolls, sometimes over 20 feet long, and they tell stories of legendary heroes.
Oh, wow. So definitely not something you just like hang up in your living room.
Right. Exactly.
What kind of stories are depicted in these paintings?
Well, the one that we're going to focus on today is called Pabuji Ki Phad, and it tells the story of Pabuji, who's a folk hero.
Okay, Pabuji.
Pabuji, yes.
Yeah.
And he's practically a demigod in Rajasthan.
Okay, so what made him so legendary?
Well, his life was full of adventure battles, alliances, incredible acts of bravery, and all that kind of stuff that makes for a really good legend. And these stories are more than just entertainment, though. They're actually really important to the history and the culture of the area because they're how these stories and this history was passed down for generations.
So like visual records of their history.
Yes, sort of. I mean, not exactly. You're getting warmer, but they weren't meant to just be like in a museum behind ropes. You know,
Yeah.
They were meant to be seen and heard.
Okay, interesting.
That's where the Bhopas come in.
The Bhopas. Who are the Bhopas?
They are traveling performer priests who used the fad paintings as backdrops for their performances. So imagine unfurling this huge scroll and then using it to narrate Pabuji's story through song dance dramatic storytelling.
Oh, wow. It's like a one-man show, but with an epic painting as the set.
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty awesome. How long do these performances last?
Well, get this. These performances can last for 7 days and nights.
7 days and nights.
Wow. That's a long time.
That's a very long time.
Yeah.
I could barely like binge watch a show for that long.
Right.
So the Bhopas are solo acts?
Not exactly. They have a very important partner, their wives,
Oh.
the Bhopis. And while the Bhopa is narrating the story, the Bhopi is actually holding a lamp in front of the scroll,
Okay.
illuminating the scenes as the story unfolds.
Like a human spotlight.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so cool. That must be amazing to watch the stories come to life like that. What happens to the scrolls when they get old?
That's really interesting, actually. When the scrolls get old, they're placed in the Ganges River as a mark of respect.
Oh, wow.
Because they recognize the sacredness of the art and the stories they depict.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It's like a testament to how much these paintings mean to them, not just as art, but as part of their culture and spirituality.
Right, exactly. And that reverence extends to the way that the paintings are actually made, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the creation process. What
Yeah.
makes these paintings so special?
They're traditionally created on hand-woven cloth, and they use natural pigments, things like yellow, orpiment, verdigris, indigo, all from natural sources.
Wow, so it's like they're pulling the colors straight from the earth.
Yes, pretty much.
That's incredible. I bet those pigments create some really vibrant color.
They do. And each color actually has a symbolic meaning. For example, black outlines are used for all of the figures, and indigo is specifically chosen to portray demons.
Oh, so there's like a hidden language within the colors.
Yes, exactly.
It's fascinating. So it's more than just a pretty picture. There's a whole nother layer of storytelling happening through the choice of color.
Exactly. There's a lot of symbolism in these paintings.
It makes you wonder, how has something so deeply rooted in tradition survived in today's world? Like, has it had to change at all?
That is a great question, and it really speaks to this balance between preserving tradition and adapting to the modern world. And yeah, fad painting has evolved in some ways.
Okay, here's where things get interesting. Tell me more.
Well, one thing is they have introduced smaller, more accessible formats, like framed quints, for example,
That makes sense.
which cater to a modern audience who might not have room for a 20-foot scroll.
Right. Not everybody's got a palace to display these masterpieces in.
Exactly.
So they're adapting to modern living spaces. What about the stories themselves? Are they still sticking to the traditional epics, or are they branching out?
Well, the epics are still very popular, but there are now fad paintings that depict stories of other historical figures too, like Maharana Pratap and Prithviraj Chauhan, and they've even started incorporating contemporary themes,
Oh, wow. What,
like women's empowerment.
That's really cool. So they're finding ways to connect with modern audiences while still honoring that traditional art form.
Exactly. It's like breathing new life into an ancient tradition.
Right. But I imagine that comes with its own set of challenges.
It does, you're right. One of the major concerns is over-commercialization.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem.
Hmm.
When art becomes a commodity, sometimes the original meaning and purpose can get lost.
Exactly. There's
Right.
this delicate balance between making the art form accessible to a wider audience and preserving its authenticity. And then, of course, there's also the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic,
Yeah.
which has unfortunately led to a decline in the number of fad practitioners.
That's heartbreaking. It
Yeah.
really highlights how fragile these traditions can be, especially in the face of global events like that.
It really does, and it underscores the importance of supporting these traditional arts and crafts and recognizing the value that they bring to our cultural landscape.
Absolutely. But amidst all these challenges, it is encouraging to know that fad painting has been included in India's list of intangible cultural heritage.
Yes, it has. It's a testament to the cultural significance of this art form, and it shows the need to protect and preserve it.
As we've been talking about these scrolls and the epic tales they depict, I've been thinking about the actual visual style of the paintings. Is there a certain aesthetic that defines fad paintings?
Yeah, that's a great observation. And yes, fad paintings have a very distinctive style that has evolved over centuries.
So tell me, what are some of the key features that make them so unique?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, they're traditionally painted on a horizontal scroll, and that dictates how the story unfolds visually. The scenes are often arranged in a sequential manner, almost like panels in a comic strip guiding the viewer's eye through the narrative.
Oh, so it's like a visual journey through the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the figures themselves are quite stylized. They often have these large, expressive eyes, elongated bodies, and vibrant costumes that reflect the region's traditional attire.
I'm picturing bold colors, intricate patterns, a sense of movement within the scenes.
You're spot on. There's a vibrancy and an energy to fad paintings that really draws you in. And the use of natural pigments adds a depth and richness to the colors that's really hard to replicate with synthetic materials.
Yeah, it's amazing how just the choice of materials can influence the overall aesthetic of the artwork.
Absolutely. And in the case of fad paintings, the use of natural pigments really connects the artwork to the land and the traditions of the region.
It's a reminder that art is so often intertwined with the environment and the culture that it originates from.
It is. And while fad painting has its roots in traditional Rajput styles, it was also later influenced by the Mughal school of art.
Interesting. So you can see how different artistic influences kind of shape the evolution of the art form over time.
Yes, and you can see those influences in things like the headwear and the facial profiles of the figures depicted in the paintings.
It's amazing how art forms can evolve and adapt like that, incorporating elements from different cultures and different periods.
And speaking of evolution, there's also been a movement to introduce new narratives and themes into fad paintings.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about sticking to those traditional epics.
Not necessarily. While those stories still hold a very special place, there's a growing interest in depicting more contemporary issues and stories that resonate with modern audiences.
Okay. Like what?
Well, for example, some artists have created fad paintings that address themes like women's empowerment or the challenges faced by migrant workers.
Wow, that's really powerful. It shows that even an ancient art form can be a vehicle for expressing contemporary concerns.
It can. And it's not just about the subject matter. There's also been experimentation with new techniques and materials while still staying true to that traditional spirit of fad painting.
So they're striking a balance between innovation and preservation.
Exactly.
This is what I find so fascinating about exploring these traditional art forms. There's this inherent tension between preserving the past and adapting to the present.
It's a delicate dance, and it's inspiring to see how these artists are navigating it.
As we've been delving into the history and evolution of fad painting, I've been really struck by the role that the Bhopas and the Bhopis play in bringing these stories to life.
Oh, absolutely. They're the storytellers, the performers, the keepers of this oral tradition that's so intertwined with the art itself.
And as we mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 pandemic had a really significant impact on their livelihoods. It makes me wonder, beyond the pandemic, what are some of the other challenges that the Bhopas and the Bhopis face in the modern world?
That's a great question. One challenge is definitely the rise of technology and digital entertainment. It's created a lot more competition for the attention of audiences. People have more options for entertainment now than ever before.
Right.
And that can make it harder for traditional art forms to hold their own.
It's that age-old struggle between tradition and modernity. How can something that's been around for centuries compete with the instant gratification of the digital world?
Yeah, it's something that a lot of traditional art forms are struggling with. But the good news is that there are organizations and individuals working very hard to preserve the tradition of fad painting and the role of the Bhopas and Bhopis.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that they're doing?
Well, one approach is to create new opportunities for the Bhopas to perform in different venues in different contexts.
Okay.
For example, there have been efforts to bring fad performances into schools and universities to expose a younger generation to the art form.
I love that idea. It's
Yeah.
all about planting those seeds of appreciation early on.
Exactly. And there have also been really interesting collaborations between Bhopas and contemporary artists, musicians, filmmakers, exploring new ways to interpret and present these fad narratives.
So bridging the gap between tradition and innovation.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing the value of the Bhopas and Bhopis as cultural bearers and making sure that their knowledge and skills are passed down to future generations.
That's amazing work. It's really inspiring to see how people are fighting to safeguard this incredible art form and the traditions that surround it.
It is.
You know, as we've been discussing the challenges that traditional art forms are facing in this digital age, it's made me think about the role of commercialization.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to consider. On the one hand, commercialization can be seen as kind of a threat,
Right.
potentially leading to the exploitation of traditional arts and kind of eroding their authenticity.
Yeah, I can see how mass production and the pursuit of profit could really compromise the integrity of an art form that's so rooted in cultural and spiritual values.
Right. But on the other hand, commercialization can also be a tool for preservation.
Right.
It can create new avenues for traditional artists to actually earn a living and share their craft with a wider audience.
So it's a double-edged sword. Finding that balance is key. How is the Phad painting community navigating this?
It's an ongoing conversation, and there are a lot of different perspectives within the community. Some artists embrace the opportunities that commercialization brings, while others remain a little bit more cautious, wary of the potential pitfalls.
That makes sense. What are some of the concerns that artists have raised about commercialization?
One concern is that fad paintings might just become commodities,
Okay.
stripped of their cultural and spiritual significance. There's this worry that mass production and the pressure to cater to market demands could lead to a decline in the quality and the authenticity of the artwork.
Yeah, when art becomes solely about profit, something
Yeah.
can be lost.
Exactly. And there's also the issue of fair compensation for the artists.
Right.
There's a risk that middlemen and retailers might exploit the artists, taking a larger share of the profits, while the creators themselves don't get much.
That's a serious problem. It's so important to make sure that artists are being paid fairly for their work and that their intellectual property rights are protected.
Absolutely. And then there's also the worry that commercialization could lead to the homogenization of fad painting, with unique regional styles and individual artistic expressions being sacrificed just to appeal to the masses.
It's that push and pull between preserving diversity and catering to a global market. Yeah. So how are they addressing that within the fad painting community?
There are ongoing discussions and efforts to promote ethical commercialization practices that really respect the traditions and the artists involved.
What are some of the principles that are guiding those ethical practices?
One is transparency. It's really important for consumers to understand where these paintings are coming from,
Right.
to know the story behind the artwork and who created it.
Yeah, it's about valuing the art and the artist, not just seeing it as some decorative object.
Exactly. Another one is fair trade, making sure that the artists are receiving a fair price for their work and that the profits are being shared equitably.
So it's about creating a sustainable ecosystem where the art form and the artists can both thrive.
Exactly. And then there's also a lot of effort to raise awareness about the cultural and spiritual significance of these paintings
Right.
so that people understand the traditions and the stories behind the artwork.
So it's about fostering a deeper appreciation and understanding for the art form, not just seeing it as like a passing trend.
Exactly. It's about honoring the heritage of fad painting while also embracing its potential to connect with a wider audience.
As we've been discussing all of these commercial aspects of fad painting, it's really made me realize that there are so many layers to this art form.
There are.
It's not just about aesthetics or storytelling. It's about culture history, spirituality, economics, this balance between tradition and innovation.
It really is. It's like a microcosm of all the complexities of the modern world, all reflected in these paintings.
It's a reminder that even something as seemingly simple as a painting can hold a wealth of knowledge and insights.
It really can. That's what makes exploring these traditional art forms so rewarding. They give us a window into different ways of seeing the world.
I couldn't agree more. what I wouldn't give to actually experience a fad performance firsthand.
Oh, me too. Can you imagine sitting under the night sky, the lamplight illuminating the scroll, and the Bhopa's voice weaving tales of heroes and legends?
It would be like stepping back in time,
It would.
connecting with a tradition that's been passed down for centuries.
And who knows, maybe we'll get to experience that someday.
I hope so. That would be incredible. But until then, I think we've given our listeners a pretty good taste of what these fad paintings are all about.
I think so.
So for those listening who are just totally captivated by this art form now, is there any way that they can experience it for themselves?
There are actually quite a few ways. The internet is a great place to start. You can find tons of images, articles, even virtual galleries dedicated to fad paintings.
Oh, perfect. For like a little virtual tour.
Exactly. And if you're ever lucky enough to travel to Rajasthan, there are museums and cultural centers that house some really incredible collections.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can see these massive scrolls in person.
See those vibrant colors up close.
Exactly. And you never know, you might even get to see a live performance. There are still Bhopas and Bhopis carrying on the tradition.
Now that would be really special to hear those stories come to life.
You would.
Well, I think we've given everyone a great starting point for their own little fad painting adventures. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think what really strikes me about fad painting is how it reminds us that tradition and innovation aren't mutually exclusive. This art form is so deeply rooted in the past, yet it continues to evolve and find new ways to connect with people today.
Yeah, it's like they're a bridge between worlds carrying ancient stories into the future.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to step back into our world. But hopefully we've left everyone with a little bit of a sense of wonder and a desire to learn more.
Me too. It's been a pleasure diving deep into the world of fad paintings.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, happy exploring.